In 1988, the Cold War was thawing, and for the first time ever, an American feature film crew led by star Arnold Schwarzenegger was allowed to film in Moscow. Those were good times after some very bad times, and thank God the Cold War is over, and we don't have to worry about the threat of nuclear war ever again. Man, my timing is bad. It's time to talk about Red Heat. Let's do it while we still can, I guess. Fuck. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Every Arnold Movie Ever, episode 15. Arnold Schwarzenegger notched his biggest hit to date in 1987 with Predator and was suddenly commanding a $5 million salary per picture. That's far beyond his original dream of making $1 million as an actor. Arnold had overcome impossible odds, concerns about his accent, his acting ability, and his atypical bodybuilding frame, and Hollywood and global audiences accepted him as a headlining movie star. He made it. But his competitive nature never faded. He was always seeking out new ways to challenge himself. And in 1988, he would take two big risks, playing his first character with an accent, well, an accent that wasn't his own and also wasn't dubbed over.
I'm tired of the same old faces, the same old things.
Hi, I'm Chief Master Sergeant William Candy.
Have you ever seen that deleted scene from Terminator 3? Oh, buddy, it deserves its own video when we get to it. I'm sorry, that clip always throws me. Hang on, I got to see a little more.
Ooh, it's me.
I mean, truly unhinged. Imagine if that made the final cut of the movie. And people saw that in 2003. I don't know. Maybe we wouldn't be on the brink of war right now. I don't know. That scene is a risk. And back in 1988, his other big risk was headlining his first straight-up mainstream comedy. Now, if you've been watching this series, you might be saying, nerd, what the hell? Hercules in New York is a comedy. The Villain was a comedy. First of all, please don't yell at me. I'm doing the best I can. And second, in the loosest terms, yes, those are technically comedies, but they weren't mainstream. Hercules in New York never even got a proper release, and this was before Arnold's on-screen persona had fully matured. The stakes were a lot lower than they are for a guy pulling $5 million out of a movie's budget. Anyway, none of that matters for this episode, because I'm not talking about the comedy. I'm procrastinating is what I'm doing. We're going to talk about Red Heat, but before we do, let's all acknowledge the 8-ton nuclear warhead in the room. As of this video, Vladimir Putin is trying to take over Ukraine. It's fucked up. I really hope this shit ends soon. It is scary. It's sad. And I know you're probably watching this video for a brief escape from reality, but not even Arnold is safe from this shit. He even released a video appealing to the Russian people.
This is an illegal war. Your lives, your limbs, your futures are being sacrificed for a senseless war condemned by the entire world.
Fucking tragic. Like, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and now we're like, you know what we should do? Let's just sprinkle a little nuclear winter on top of that. See how that feels. Luckily, Red Heat does not have a lot of parallels with what's happening today. So we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled program, but that had to be addressed. Okay, so where the hell was I? Arnold was testing the limits of what audiences would accept of him. At this point, he was firmly in the pocket, as my friend Bunker would say. He's an action star who leaves a wake of corpses and corny puns in his path. But if he continued down that road, he'd risk becoming a parody of himself. The Running Man got him dangerously close with his over-reliance on one-liners, sometimes two-liners. Thank you, Boy Named Sue. So he needed to make a tweak to the formula. It's something he'd do again and again in his career with an almost preternatural instinct, subvert expectations at exactly the right time. Except for when he made Last Action Hero and nobody was along for that ride. Come on, people, what the hell? And this might be the reason why Arnold reached out to director Walter Hill, known at the time for directing The Warriors, Streets of Fire, and 48 Hours. According to Hill, I thought it would be interesting if he could play a Russian cop in the US. I wanted to do a traditional John Wayne, Clint Eastwood larger-than-life movie. You then ask the question, will the American audience accept an unapologetic Soviet hero, someone who will not defect at the end of the movie? Walter pitched the idea to Arnold. All Walter had in the beginning was an opening scene. I play a Soviet detective named Ivan Danko, and I'm chasing a guy down. I find him in a Moscow pub, and when he resists arrest, we fight. To the horror of the bystanders, I lift his right leg and brutally break it. Moviegoers would be grossed out by that. Well, in the next instant, you see that the limb is artificial and it's filled with white powder, cocaine. That was Walter's idea, and as soon as I heard it, I said, I love it, I'm in. Technically, it wasn't Walter's idea. It came from a script sent to him by Harold Kleiner, and he paid Kleiner for that one scene. And so, that was enough. Arnold was on board to the tune of another $5 million paycheck. By the way, that's 16.66666666667 times the budget of his first movie, Hercules in New York. My God, how far he's come. Now, they took the idea to Carolco Pictures, a production company led by Mario Casar and Andrew, don't say it, Vanya. Yeah, got it right. Carolco broke out with the success of Rambo and Rambo First Blood Part 2. This is another one of those domino effect deals that happens in Arnold's career. If he doesn't do Red Heat with Carolco, he doesn't ask them to buy the rights to Total Recall when Dino De Laurentiis goes bankrupt. If Total Recall isn't a hit, Arnold doesn't go back to Casar and Vanya to have them buy the rights to the Terminator franchise, and therefore T2 as we know it doesn't exist. Those Terminator rights are a legal nightmare that prevented Cameron from making a sequel for years. I will cover that in the T2 episode, but suffice it to say, the Arnold-Carolco collaboration cemented his legacy as the greatest action star of all time, and it all starts with Red Heat. Am I pointing to it? It's right here. They also had the best logo intro of the 80s and 90s that triggered a Pavlovian response for any Arnold fan. Ah, so that's how you do it. Total Recall? Terminator? Wagons East. Walter Hill has a very specific screenwriting style, which he describes as haiku style. It's very economical, and since the movie was greenlit off of one scene, the production started without a complete script. So here he's writing this very spare script and trying to figure out as he goes along. What they did know is that it was a fish out of water meets buddy cop story. Very 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, all the other ones at that time, with Arnold's Ivan Danko chasing down a drug dealer who flees to Chicago, and Danko has to team up with a cranky, sloppy Chicago cop, Art Ridzik, played by Jim Belushi. For Arnold's role as a Russian, he learned some Russian and worked out an accent that mostly consists of his regular accent, but with a trill on the R's. Get out of here. Hill also had him watch Greta Garbo in the 1939 film Ninochka and used that as a model of how Danko should react as a loyal Soviet in the West.
We're here for work, all of us. Let's not waste any time. Shall we go?
The rest of the cast is rounded out with some interesting choices. Peter Boyle plays a police chief who's attempting to be more zen. Edo Ross plays the villain Victor Rosta. His background was mostly in theater before he gets a nice run of action movies in the 80s. Ooh, Action Jackson. Gina Gershon plays Victor's American wife in one of her earliest roles. And Lawrence Fishburne, also an early role, so early, he's Larry Fishburne, plays a lieutenant who butts heads with Belushi. Overall, some cool casting in this movie. And oh, guess who's responsible? Yeah, that's right, it's Jackie Birch, the unsung hero of Arnold movies, who always knows how to surround him with compelling performers. One of the cool things about doing this series is that as I dig deeper into these movies, I do find these consistencies. Like Jackie Birch, this is somebody who is responsible for casting some of the greatest movies of the 80s and 90s. So when you see a name like Jackie Birch, and then you connect it to Predator, and you connect it to Running Man, you connect it to this movie, and you see all the people that are surrounding Arnold, it's just nice to acknowledge it takes a lot of people to make a movie, and each one of those people have to do their job perfectly in order for it all to work out. Now, the most noteworthy aspect of production, this was the first American production ever allowed to shoot in the Red Square. They had a 6-month waiting period, no sound equipment was allowed, and they were only able to use one camera, except Once they got into Russia and started shooting, everyone went, oh my God, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he drew a huge crowd of people. So while they do shoot in Red Square, quite a few of the scenes taking place in Russia were actually shot in Budapest. And that's where our first act takes place. It opens in a shady, sweaty bathhouse. We meet Ivan Danko wearing this tiny, sexy chef's apron, and our first Arnold cheek peek since the Terminator. And that is the type of hard-hitting trivia you're only going to get from someone who exhaustively watches all of Arnold's movies from beginning to end. You're welcome. Danko scans the place and finds, wouldn't you know it, Sven Ole Thorsen. He's given a very hot rock as some sort of manliness test, and he passes that test by giving the rock back to the guy via punch to the face. A fight breaks out of the bathhouse, literally, and we're treated to a naked snow fight. It's revealed that Danko is looking for a drug dealer named Victor Rosta, which old Sven helps him out with before getting knocked out. We get our beauty shots of Moscow to make it all worth it, and then it's off to the scene that sold Arnold on the movie. He tracks Rosta to a bar, there's a fight, a broken leg, oh my God, it's wooden, and the cocaine.
Cocainum.
And it really is a clever scene. It's a nice setup. Victor flees and ends up killing Danko's partner while Danko kills Victor's brother. Strong start, but after 15 minutes, we're done with Moscow. And it's off to Chicago where Victor has fled and is setting up a new drug trade. Now, Red Heat and Raw Deal share this war on drugs theme, though it's a little more pronounced here. It's very 80s. We then meet Art, an unprofessional cop who makes a drug bust. They didn't have a warrant or anything. They just bust in there. So I feel like this isn't entirely legal. They eventually catch everyone, and Art makes what I guess is a joke.
You look like Marvin Hagler to me. I lost money on Hagler!
Except it's vaguely racist and not very funny. These guys are connected to Victor in the drug trade, and then Victor gets arrested off-screen, and Danko is sent to Chicago to retrieve him. Ridzik is sent to meet him at the airport, and as these things are supposed to go, they don't get along. Pro tip, if you need a shortcut to show that your character is a slob, have him A, hit on a woman, and B, chew on some food. There you go. Ridzik gives us another fake joke, a folk, if you will.
Language school in Kiev.
Oh, yeah. That's like, as in chicken Kiev. Yeah, we had that at my sister's wedding.
It's not a joke, just a reference to a food. Danko decides to stay at the same motel where they arrested Victor. They had him set up in a nice hotel, but he refused. I'm assuming this is so he doesn't enjoy the modern comforts of America. But he fires up the TV and porn starts to play, so, he ended up getting those comforts after all.
Capitalism.
Danko meets the police chief, who goes on a little diatribe about stress management.
You watch the fishes, you water the plants, special breathing exercises. Relax.
Which is an amusing take for a police chief, except they drop it almost immediately.
Personally, I think it may all be a pile of shit.
You don't hear about it ever again. Arnold does get a funny line in, though.
How do you Soviets deal with all the tension and stress?
Vodka.
And then Danko goes to retrieve Victor in jail and finds a locker key, the least exciting MacGuffin of all time. A MacGuffin, if you will. There's an exchange between Art and Danko that encapsulates why their relationship just isn't quite gelling.
Use bishop to queen 4.
Thanks for your advice, comrade, but I think I got it covered.
First, Art's playing a computer chess game against himself, which isn't very exciting, but also we don't get to see him ignore Danko's advice, and we don't get to see him react when he finds out Danko was right. Instead, we just cut to him telling Danko,
oh, by the way, you're right about that chess move. I was dead in 2.
and Danko says,
It was obvious.
it's like, I get the intention, I know what they were going for, it just doesn't work. Then it seems like the movie's about to end, because Danko has Victor in custody. I guess they blew their budget on Moscow. But then Danko gets ambushed. And now it's Art's partner's turn to get killed, so they both have the identical personal stake in catching Victor. Danko passes out, but not before he retrieves that MacGuffin, and Larry Fishburne informs Art, the raid they conducted earlier? Yeah, it was illegal, just like I thought. Everyone walked. Danko recovers from his concussion pretty quickly, and we find out he brought a gun over here. Here's the excuse he gives for having it.
Diplomatic immunity.
And if you're like me, you can't hear the words diplomatic immunity without thinking of Lethal Weapon 2.
Diplomatic immunity.
I wonder if they lifted that from Red Heat. Danko says he's working undercover, and then we get some more folks from Belushi.
I bagged one of your Russians. Unfortunately, he's not dead. When he comes to, maybe you should talk to him.
How long before this happens?
What is it, 60 minutes? Do I look like a doctor to you?
Then we have a couple attempts at language barrier humor that actually works better than Belushi's stuff, but not by much.
You can't even touch his ass.
I do not want to touch his ass. I want to make him talk.
You're shitting me.
I'm not shitting on you.
And from here on out, the movie becomes a series of scenes where they're trying to track down Victor. Rizik plants drugs on an informant, then Danko nearly breaks his finger to get information. Just a couple of shitty cops doing shitty things. And they're led to Joliet prison to meet a drug kingpin. This scene is one of the highlights. Abdul Elijah, he's an interesting character. He has a little bit of depth.
What is your political crime?
I robbed a bank.
And he's too smart to fall for Danko's strong-arm tactics.
And I settled for your eyes.
You can't threaten me, white boy.
But he needs this goddamn key too, so he gives Danko the info he needs anyway. We learn that Ivan owns a parakeet.
What's that? My watch. Time to feed parakeet.
Which is adorable and humanizing and is probably the biggest mistake this movie makes, telling us Danko has a parakeet and not letting us see him feed it and give it little Russian kisses. They then meet up with Victor's wife, Kat, and this is starting to turn into an episode of Law and Order. They're just randomly interviewing people. Belushi drops 2 masturbation references in the span of 5 minutes.
Time to feed parakeet.
What's that, Russian for jerking off?
Well, you got all the ideas. Maybe I'll just go home and whack off.
Neither one all that effective.
I guess not.
But that's not all. In the same span of time, we get another set of identical lines from Belushi.
To fill out paperwork for the rest of my life.
That means I gotta fill out reports until I retire.
And neither of these are echoes or callbacks to each other. They're just treated as brand new ideas. And I'm going to say this is a product of 2 things. Not having a completed script and possibly giving Belushi free rein to improvise. It just doesn't seem like any of this was really thought out. They just kind of let him fire off whatever he wanted to say off the top of his head, and they left it in the movie.
You think she bought those?
I don't think so. I think those are homegrown. How you doing, honey?
Blow yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good thinking.
Fuck you.
I'll think you have a headache and good taste. Don't worry, I'll get you something healthy. Something from all 4 food groups. Hamburger, french fries, coffee, and donuts.
Jesus Christ, I just burned off my dick! Wrecked the goddamn suit, and I hardboiled my nuts. I look like I pissed in my pants all goddamn night.
Yo, sweet cheeks. While we're young, huh?
Stupid goddamn fucking Russians! I'm talking about Victor. Except Victor's not stupid, because he's got the key.
Undercover? You look like Gumby.
Whatever you say, Gumby. It's on Moscow time. Time to pick up Pokey?
Nice work, Gumby.
Thank you.
I didn't mean that.
At least when Arnold gave 2-liners in The Running Man, they were varied and cheesy enough to be funny.
How about the light? What a hothead.
More effective is this moment when Danko gets hassled by a guy with a baseball bat, and we get a callback to Art explaining Miranda rights to him.
In this country, we try to protect the rights of individuals. It's called the Miranda Act.
You move your ass or you give me 50, or I take my Pete Rose here and fucking mutilate your car.
Do you know Miranda?
Never heard of the bitch.
Then their investigation leads to a parking garage where Danko and Victor come face to face for a 3rd time. Victor tries to bribe Danko, but it doesn't work, and Danko can't nab him because they're holding Art at gunpoint. So that scene just kind of ends, and they head to the hospital to question the one surviving Russian from the earlier ambush. Unfortunately, Victor has ordered his own man killed, so he doesn't talk. Belushi, of course, ogles the nurse, who turns out to be a man in disguise, and I'm actually surprised they showed as much restraint here as they did and didn't go all out with the cross-dressing jokes, especially in the 80s. Look, don't get me wrong, there are some.
Transvesto killed Tatomovich by shooting an air bubble into a vein.
The drag queen belongs to Victor?
Just not as many as, say, jokes about filling out paperwork. I'll call that a win. This scene is pretty strong, though, even though it's kind of out of order. They've already just met with Victor, so why are they talking to this guy? Anyway, they chase down the nurse. Victor's wife gets in between them. The henchman almost kills Art, but Danko blasts him. I like this little detail of his wig getting caught in the glass. Those are the things that make a scene memorable. Peter Boyle now shows up as almost a different character as he was playing earlier.
Your gun, Captain! Now! Don't fuck with me!
Confiscates Danko's gun because I'm starting to think that stress relief scene was only to get to Danko's vodka joke.
Vodka.
Art gives Danko another gun, and we get our second Dirty Harry reference in an Arnold movie.
Everyone knows the Magnum 44 is the big boy in the black. Why do you think Dirty Harry uses it?
Who is Dirty Harry?
First time was in Raw Deal.
Who do you think I look like? Dirty Harry?
Then the two of them bond at a diner. It's a nice, quiet scene, and the movie could have used maybe one or two more of these. Danko returns to his motel where Kat is calling him with a tip about the drug deal. And then Victor shows up with some henchmen to kill Danko. Now Victor double-crosses the henchmen he brought with him for reasons I don't know. I had trouble following Victor's motivations for screwing these guys over, but he does it several times. Danko kills some henchmen who were clearly trained by stormtroopers. How do you not hit this guy? He's gigantic. And Victor steals back his locker key. Danko's parakeet alarm almost gets him killed here. And there's this nicely framed shot where Danko opens the door and Victor's behind it, but neither one knows the other is there. Very cool. Wish there were more of these. Shocker, Victor escapes again. Then Kat gets killed off screen, an ignoble end to a poorly written character, and Art and Danko make one last-ditch effort to figure out where this goddamn locker key is from. Oh my god. It's this weird tangent of a scene where Art meets with his wife's ex-husband. They have a conversation about alimony. He's a locksmith. Somehow Danko's reading a book that leads him to a bus station locker. I don't know how, but I guess this is how police work is supposed to be. I don't know. Is this interesting? Just feels like they're killing time at this point. But hey, if it's going to lead him to the bus station, I'm all for it. Let's go. They track him down, but Danko ends up pointing his gun at Art. It's his way of saying, I'm taking this guy back to Russia and nothing is getting in my way. But the distraction is enough for Victor to get away via bus. So Danko gets a bus of his own, and we get a nifty bus chase sequence. He also tells Ritzik, get in, an inverse of
get out.
And the sheer size of the buses makes this unique. Especially when Danko and Victor play chicken. Danko is 100% willing to sacrifice his and Ritzik's life to kill Victor, which is pretty shitty, but Ritzik saves them at the last second, and we get two spectacular bus crashes. Danko and Victor face off for the fourth and final time in the movie, and just like everyone else, Victor cannot seem to shoot Danko. I mean, the guy doesn't even try to duck. He's an easy target. So Danko immediately shoots Victor, and that's it, he's dead. And Ivan doesn't even get the one-liners. Here comes Jim Belushi running in with his stupid shit.
Did you get him? Nice grouping of your shots. Got a real attitude problem, Danko.
What's he talking about? I do not understand his comedy style. I don't. He's just saying things. Hey guys, it's me. Sorry, I gotta pause on my dumb face for a second. So, I'm editing this and realizing I am being incredibly hard on Jim Belushi, but I don't know, does he really deserve it? I mean, yes, only about 4% of the jokes he lobs here land in the strike zone, but is he really that bad? Maybe, but I feel like I have to say something nice, because I'm just piling on to the guy. His bit part in Jingle All the Way was my favorite part of that movie, and somehow I failed to mention this. He was in Twin Peaks: The Return, and he's great. Cherry pie. Granted, that's 30 years after Red Heat, but hey, better late than never. All right, let's get off my stupid dumb face here and back to the episode. And then we get one last bonding scene. I like how they went straight to the airport and didn't even bother to clean up their wounds. The two of them exchange watches as a sign of respect, and Danko is off to Russia. And we get one last shot of Red Square, gotta get your money's worth, and that's Red Heat. Okay, here's something weird. I thought I saw this as a kid. Why wouldn't I? It's right in the middle of his epic run of hits, movies that I've seen over and over and over again. But maybe not, because I did not remember one frame of Red Heat. It was like uncovering a long-lost Arnold movie. And because of that, this was an exciting watch, especially those first 15 minutes in Russia. The scene with the wooden leg is pretty great, and the Moscow setting feels fresh. Unfortunately, Once they move to Chicago, it just becomes a collection of scenes, all with the same purpose, tracking down Victor. And it kind of just wears you down after a while. There are a number of standalone scenes that work. The bathhouse, the cocaine leg, the scene in Joliet, the hospital shootout, the bus chase. Even as I say this, well, it sounds like a lot, but they're padded out by too much fluff and an investigation that's an uninteresting copy and paste from other buddy cop movies. Plus, a locker key? Good Lord. Not exactly Rosebud, right? If they could have strung together just a few more clever ideas, it would have strengthened the backbone of this story, and I think it might have taken it to maybe another, I don't want to say great, but it would have taken it to another level. I also don't think the inner workings of the Chicago Police Department were all that compelling. Again, Peter Boyle's character, at first you're like, oh, this is cool. This will be a new take on this type of character that we've seen 100 times. But they immediately forget it and move on and make him just a stereotype. And I do think that's part of, if you're working on the script as you're making the movie, you don't have the ability to step back and look at it on a whole and say, okay, what are we missing here? When is this going to connect later in the movie? And are we being consistent with these characters? Or do we just want to do this one stress relief scene because it'll be funny when Arnold says vodka? Also, the fact that Danko and Victor come face to face 4 different times throughout the movie takes away any real suspense that Danko's going to catch this guy. Victor seems pretty easy to find, even though the thrust of the movie is going from scene to scene, tracking the guy down. Or sometimes they leave a scene with Victor to go to another scene where they're like, we need to find Victor. Or they're trying to find that locker key. Arnold's acting style here closely resembles that of the Terminator. He's icy, stoic, and stiff, walks like he has a rod in his back. He's very mechanical, which is what the assignment called for, seen in Nochka. Walter Hill intentionally pulled back on giving Arnold one-liners and having feats of strength because he wanted him to feel more grounded in reality. I think he does a good job, but the problem with that is it boxes Arnold in and takes away one of his biggest weapons, his charisma. And like I talked about in my Running Man video, you have to be careful with Arnold and one-liners. Too many, and it's comedy. Too few, and it's not very entertaining. Arnold has some dry as toast one-liners or like mangled American phrases here, but they're delivered without a wink to the audience, and they don't land properly. There's something a bit off here. Now, they try to balance that out by putting all the comedic onus on Jim Belushi's shoulders, and he's just not up to the task. He's acting at Arnold instead of acting with him, carelessly throwing out line after line without any care towards a setup-payoff structure.
It's like as in Chicken Kiev.
But he's not the only one. There's Victor, who's not convincing enough as someone who can evade and outsmart Danko. Edo Ross, he's capable in the role, but his character doesn't add up to much more than a stock Russian villain. Probably the biggest problem with Red Heat is that it falls into these cliches too often. The stoic Russian cop, the evil Russian drug lord, the loudmouth Chicago cop, the angry police chief, the hapless wife who meets a tragic end. There are elements that could have changed this. Go further with the police chief's stress relief. Give Danko a dang parakeet like he's Coco Beware. Have Jim Belushi be not Jim Belushi and instead be Bill Murray. And the movie starts to take on new life. I watched Red Heat twice for this video, and both times, the first 15 minutes in Moscow got me, and I was starting to wonder, has my every Arnold movie ever journey uncovered an under-the-radar classic that we can now reassess all these years later? But as the movie settled into cliche, I settled into the realization that there's a reason Red Heat isn't talked about as much as his other movies made around this time, and that's because it is a miscalculation of the Arnold formula. Close, so close. Red Heat was released on June 17th, 1988 and grossed $35 million domestic. I couldn't find the worldwide numbers, but the budget is estimated to be about $29 million, so it's profitable but not a hit. It beat out Big in its third week and newcomers The Great Outdoors and Bull Durham, but dropped the following week when Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out and another Fish Out of Water story coming to America the week after that. Here's how Arnold saw it.
Red Heat was a success, grossing $35 million in the States, but it wasn't the smash I expected. It could be that audiences were not ready for Russia, or that my and Jim Belushi's performances were not funny enough. or that the director didn't do a good enough job. For whatever reason, it just didn't quite close the deal.
Walter Hill concurred.
It did pretty well at the domestic box office, but not as well as what we hoped it would do. It was big foreign. It was a very big seller on cassette. The movie, after he left Moscow, I never thought was much good.
Of course, we all know Arnold can't win with Siskel.
The chases, they all start to run together in my mind. Red Heat has a few funny lines, but Schwarzenegger is so stone-faced in this picture, and Belushi gets so little chance to expand his character that Red Heat has no human value.
But I actually agree with Gene on this one. But hey, guess where Ebert lands?
I guess I liked it more than you did. I think there were more than a few funny lines, and I thought that a lot of them keyed off the fact that Schwarzenegger was stone-faced. I don't think that I agree with you, because I like Schwarzenegger's performance here. I like the Russian accent, and I like the fact that he's not playing the basic Schwarzenegger character.
Spoiler alert, not counting Red Sonja or the villain, which Ebert didn't do print reviews for, but ripped apart on his show, Roger Ebert's first 2-star review of an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie will not come until the year 1997. Can you guess which movie it is without looking it up? The answer won't surprise you. Now, Red Heat. Red Heat. Red Heat is worth a watch if you haven't seen it, but it's not quite a hidden gem. However, like a lot of lesser Arnold movies, it is still important to his overall career because it leads to bigger and better things. Again, without Conan the Destroyer, there's no Terminator. Without a pause in production on Predator, there's no Running Man. Even though it's not better than Predator, I'm glad it exists. Without Raw Deal, there's no bankrupting of Dino De Laurentiis and the loss of the rights of Total Recall. And without Red Heat and his relationship with Kassar and Vanya, there's no Total Recall, or most importantly, there is no Terminator 2. That makes Red Heat an incredibly important movie in his filmography, albeit just not a very good one. All right, let's get to the stats. Acting chops, 7. Coming off the ham-fisted performance in The Running Man, it is nice to see Arnold show some restraint again. I think the material lets him down, but he gives the performance the movie asked of him. Kill count, 7, for a total of 295. We're approaching 300. Catchphrase, I guess, vodka. And here are the updated every Arnold movie ever rankings. You got your cameos. Number 13, that son of a bitch Hercules in New York. Number 12, The Villain. Number 11, Red Sonja. Number 10, Stay Hungry. Number 9, starting to get into a logjam here in the middle of the list. I have to be honest. Red Heat is a better crafted movie than Raw Deal or Conan the Destroyer. But Raw Deal has a slightly higher entertainment factor, and the gravel pit sequence is more memorable than anything in Red Heat. So 9 is Red Heat, 8 is Raw Deal. That's what I'm going with. 7, Conan the Destroyer. 6, The Running Man. 5, Pumping Iron. 4, Conan the Barbarian. 3, Commando. 2, Predator. And 1, The Terminator. Next up, Arnold takes another big swing and tries his hand at pure comedy by teaming with the legendary Ivan Reitman and Danny DeVito. But unlike Red Heat, this was a grand slam that had audiences laughing simply at the mere mention of the concept.
I'm doing one with Danny DeVito, which is a straight comedy. It's called
a strange
Twins.
combination.
Yeah, it's
Twins?
Twins, yes.
And it became the first true runaway $200 million mega hit and the start of an epic 4-film run that earned over $1 billion and perfected the Arnold Schwarzenegger formula. This is going to be fun. It's time to talk Twins. See you then.